The wife of the man accused of the Lin family murders has wiped away tears as the frantic 000 phone call she made was played inside a Sydney court. Kathy Lin made the call after discovering the bodies of her brother and his family 3 years ago.
What's the problem? What's wrong?
Yeah.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
I'm not sure someone I think should. I'm not sure.
You need to tell me why you need an ambulance. What's wrong?
I think someone died. I'm not sure.
Why do you think someone's dying?
I don't know.
You need to tell me something. You're asking for an ambulance, but why?
Yeah, I also need a police.
Yeah, why? What's wrong?
In a quiet neighbourhood of North Epping, Australia, the peaceful morning of July shattered when Kathy Lin and her husband Robert made a gruesome discovery at her brother Norman's home. The entire family, a well-liked, hard-working immigrant family who had built a successful life and business, lay brutally murdered, sparing only their teenage daughter Brenda, who happened to be on a school trip. What followed was a chilling investigation that unearthed dark secrets and a twisted motive rooted in envy, resentment, and betrayal within the family. The seemingly senseless violence left the community in shock. On the morning of July 18, 2009, Kathy and her husband, Robert Lin Bin Si, arrived at the home of her brother Norman Lin in a quiet neighborhood. They were shocked to find that Norman and his entire family had been brutally killed. Norman was 45 years old and his wife Lily was 44. Lily's sister, Irene, was also found dead. Even more tragically, Norman and Lily's children, Henry and Terry, had also been killed. The only family member left alive was their teenage daughter Brenda, who was away on a school trip. Kathy and Robert just had dinner with the Normans family the night before. They couldn't understand why someone would target such a seemingly ordinary family. The police were called immediately, and investigators started looking for answers. In many cases like this, the killer often knows the family well. Soon the police began to suspect Robert, but before diving into the investigation, let's look at who the Lin family was and why anyone would want to harm them. Both Norman and Lily had moved from China to Australia in the early 1990s to attend university. Norman and Lily met by chance at the University of Sydney and instantly felt a strong connection. Their shared immigrant experience, along with their Chinese background, may have brought them closer. They quickly fell in love, and soon after graduating, they likely got married. In 1994, they welcomed their first child, Brenda, and moved to North Epping to start their family life. 3 years later, Henry was born, followed by Terry in 2000. The family became well liked in the community, even starting a popular local news publication. Over time, their business grew, earning them $1 million a year, which allowed them to live very comfortably as a close-knit family. Norman and Lily also supported their extended family. They cared for Lily's sister Irene, who stayed in China, and helped other relatives move to Australia. In 2002, Norman's sister Kathy and her husband, a respected ENT surgeon from China, migrated to Australia and settled in Melbourne. But despite his expertise, Kathy's husband struggled to find work in his field. Inspired by Norman's success, he decided to open a restaurant, hoping to become a successful business owner. Sadly, the business failed by 2005 and the couple moved to Sydney to be closer to Norman and his family. Kathy's husband grew resentful of Norman's success, feeling like he had lost his status since migrating. The frustration of his failed business added to his sense of loss. Underneath, he also hid disturbing impulses that he could no longer control, leading to a violent act that would soon horrify the North Epping community. On July 17th, Kathy and her husband joined the Norman Lin family for dinner, something they did often, as the Lins liked to welcome relatives into their home. Later that night, Kathy and her husband headed back home. The next morning, at around 9 a.m., a crowd gathered outside the Lins newspaper shop. The Lins were known for their punctuality, always opening early so people could grab newspapers on their way to work. But this morning was different. The shop remained closed and the Lins were nowhere to be seen. Kathy, a concerned relative, heard about this and rushed to the Lin residence with her husband. They found the front door unlocked, entered, and made a horrifying discovery. Norman, Lily, and Irene were dead, their bodies mutilated. In the boys' bedroom, Kathy found the two sons covered in blood. Only Brenda was safe because she was away on a school trip to New Caledonia. It seemed strange that Brenda's room was untouched, with her door closed and belongings undisturbed. The killer had entered the boys' room but left Brenda's alone, suggesting they knew she would be out of town and timed the attack to her absence. As it later emerged, the killer had feelings for Brenda, though these feelings were twisted and unhealthy. When Kathy found the bodies, she called 000, Australia's emergency number, and struggled to explain the horror she had seen.
Yeah, you need to say why. What have you seen or heard that makes you think someone is going to die? What is wrong? Don't scream. Just answer my question. What's wrong?
Her frantic words were met with confusion on the other end as the operator pressed her to explain what had happened and what was wrong. Meanwhile, Norman's daughter Brenda, who was just 15, was on her first trip abroad in New Caledonia. She hadn't kept in touch with her parents, too excited by her new experience. But a few hours after the news broke, Brenda saw an article about the murders on Facebook, shared by a friend. She was in shock. Just days earlier, she'd said goodbye to her family, unaware it would be the last time. After a local school principal, Susan Bridge, heard the news, she quickly arranged a flight for Brenda back to Sydney. When she arrived, her Aunt Kathy met her at the airport, crying. That was when it hit Brenda. Her parents, younger brothers, and Aunt Irene were gone. She stayed with her aunt and uncle as the police searched for the killer. However, Brenda's troubles didn't end there. A relative would soon put her through a terrifying ordeal, but we'll get to that later. First, let's see how the investigation began. Investigators began searching the crime scene. Initially, they suspected Norman might have been involved. He was kept out of sight, unlike the rest of his family. But later, they found his body close by, hidden under a blanket. This discovery removed their only lead. One thing was certain: whoever committed these murders had a connection to the family. There was no sign of forced entry, which suggested the killer had a key to the house. The killer also seemed familiar with the home's layout, managing to reach the circuit breaker in the basement, likely to cut the lights before attacking. Nothing was stolen from the house, showing that the attack wasn't a random robbery. The motive seemed personal, especially since Brenda's room was untouched, suggesting a close link to her. The state of the bodies gave more clues. Each victim's face was smashed beyond recognition. Medical examiners had to use forensic analysis to confirm their identities, indicating a violent, rage-filled attack. Further analysis showed that a hammer-like object, likely from a discount store, was used. 4 of the victims appeared to have been strangled before being hit, hinting that the killer might have been venting anger. During their investigation, they found 24 bloody footprints, all the same size, between 8.5 and 9.5. This confirmed the attack was done by a single person. On July 29th, Kathy and her husband made a public plea, asking the community to help find the person who had taken their loved ones. The police explored every angle, including possible links, but found no strong connections except for Richard, who was Kathy's husband. He didn't seem particularly sad about the loss of his family, who had supported him after his restaurant closed. In fact, he reportedly joked about a painting at the hospital where the family was declared dead. Days later, he even talked about wanting to buy a BMW, raising questions about how he could afford it without a job. Richard seemed to believe he would inherit everything the Lin family left behind. He demanded the investigators give him the key to the family's business office and started making plans to take control of their home in North Epping. The Lins also owned commercial properties in Sydney and Maryland that brought in extra income. All of these resources were in Richard's sights, and he became more and more irritated when they eluded him. Another unsettling element that would surface during the ensuing trial was also found by investigators, and it concerned Brenda. Despite the fact that Richard and his niece were not blood relatives, Richard had always liked her. However, he began to become a bit too close to Brenda when she was just 14 years old, approximately a year prior to the occurrence. He reportedly sighed as he rubbed her shoulders for more than 30 seconds at a time. Additionally, it is said that he touched her legs a lot, which made Brenda feel very uneasy. Despite this, Richard continued to act like a loving uncle, and nobody noticed his twisted feelings for his niece. After her family passed away, Brenda was forced to live with her abuser for a whole year. During this time, Richard's conduct began to worsen. The New South Wales Crime Commission requested an interview with Kathy in May 2010 after discovering fresh evidence.
Whenever I see families now, I sort of smile to myself, and I think it's absolutely lovely, and but it's also very bittersweet because it reminds me of what I don't have and probably never will.
They disclosed the existence of the bloody footprints, which had not been previously disclosed, and stated that they originated from a particular Asics shoe that had been bought sometime in 2005. The explanation for this disclosure was straightforward. Police mounted covert surveillance cameras to watch Kathy's husband's reaction after she told him about the fresh evidence. Upon viewing the hazy video, they witnessed Richard tearing up a box bearing the Asics logo before flushing it down the toilet. Previously, the bundle contained 9.5 size sneakers that matched, according to the description of the suspect's shoes. It's worth noting that Kathy was present when he disassembled the box. Did she not wonder why her husband was acting strangely? Was she complicit in it? Additional evidence indicates that she was either aware of her husband's dark side or was totally unaware of it. It had been over 2 years since Brenda's family died by May of 2011. She had been under Richard and Kathy's care, and she had endured unspeakable suffering when they had been living in the house in North Epping that had once belonged to the Lin family. Thus, it appeared that Richard had at last been able to live Norman's life. But all fell apart on May 5th when police showed up at the North Epping home and took Richard into jail. He was then sent to the Long Beach Correctional Centre. He apparently admitted to another prisoner there that his in-laws constantly felt let down by him and likened him to Norman. After several delays, Richard's trial finally started on March 17, 2014, and prosecutor Mark Tedeschi listed 3 potential reasons why Richard would have killed the family. This seems to have pushed him over the edge. The first was that he wanted to make money, the second issue was his pride, and the third was evidence that he was sexually attracted to his teenage niece. Richard also possessed a Massacre that looked remarkably like a hammer, which the prosecution claimed was the murder weapon, and he was known to wear Asics sneakers. Furthermore, Richard was up cleaning his garage on the morning of July 18th, despite his habit of sleeping in on Saturdays. Richard was further implicated in the crime when a small bloody smudge found during a check of the garage included DNA from at least 4 of the victims. The prosecution carefully built a case against Richard, showing that he was likely the one responsible for the crimes. However, the evidence was mainly circumstantial, leading to the trial being stopped. A second trial started in August, but it ended without a verdict because the judge became ill. The prosecutors tried again in February 2015, but the jurors couldn't reach an agreement. Eventually, Richard asked for bail. His lawyer told the court that Richard family would give up their passports and that the police would keep a close watch on him. By December, despite being a risk, the judge granted Richard bail for Christmas. Kathy, Richard's wife, was reportedly very happy, saying she loved him and believed in his innocence. But this joy was short-lived. On January 12, 2017, a jury found Richard guilty of the homicides on all counts. Since Australia abolished the death penalty in 1985, Richard received the maximum penalty, which was 5 consecutive life sentences without parole. Brenda later spoke about her father, expressing regret over how she had left things with him. Now that the culprit is finally in jail, Brenda hopes to move on, though doing this without her family is incredibly hard. Since the conviction, Kathy has kept a low profile. It's unclear if she still believes her husband is innocent, but it seems she no longer has a relationship with her niece. The victims of these crimes are not just those who died, but also their loved ones, who must cope with the painful memories. What do you think about this case? Did Richard receive the sentence he deserved, or did he get off easy because Australia does not have the death penalty? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.